Sometimes we need to use functional composition to create new functions. And a case where this comes into play is antibiotic dosage. Antibiotics are used to treat bacterial sinus infections. So consider a case where we have antibiotics that are taken orally, and if there were X milligrams taken orally, then we have a certain amount that's absorbed into the bloodstream, and we call that H of X, 8X divided by X plus 8. And then if Y milligrams enters into the bloodstream, then there's a certain amount surviving filtration by the liver, because the liver is going to take some out, and that would be G of Y, which would be about a quarter of Y. Finally, if we have Z milligrams that survives the filtration by the liver, then a certain amount is absorbed into the sinus. And in this case here, if Z is bigger than 1, F of Z is Z minus 1, and if it's less than or equal to 1, then F of Z is equal to 0. So we have our H of X, our G of Y, and our F of Z given on the bottom there. Now what we want to do is use functional composition to determine how much of that original oral dose gets into the sinus cavity so as to be able to treat the infection. So as a recap here, we have the oral dose, and we call that X. And then we have absorbed into blood, and we're going to call that Y is H of X. And then we have survived filtration, and we're going to call that Z is equal to G of Y. And then finally we have absorbed into sinus, and that amount will be F of Z. Using functional composition, we can rewrite Z as Z is equal to be G of H of X, and then for the amount absorbed into the sinus, it would be F of G of H of X. And so we want to compute this functional composition here. And the way to do this is to start on the inside, and we have H of X, so we get to evaluate G of H of X, and then plug that into F. So let's start with G of H of X, and we'll write that up here. G of H of X is a quarter of H of X, which is a quarter of 8X over X plus 8. And we can rewrite that as 2X over X plus 8. Now when we evaluate the function F, we need to know if the argument that goes into it is bigger than 1 or less than or equal to 1. So we'll check that right now. So 2X over X plus 8 is bigger than 1 if 2X is greater than X plus 8, which means that X would be bigger than 8. And so we remember that when we write up our F function. So F of G of H of X is going to be F of 2X over X plus H, which is equal to 2X over X plus H minus 1 if X is greater than 8. And otherwise, it's going to be 0. And so this shows how, by systematically using functional composition, we can track something through the physiology and see how we go from antibiotic dose taken orally to treatment at the sinus.